I'm sorry. But I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. All will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. Dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
Testing 1 2. All right. Well, am I talking to the world? Apparently. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Jan Irvin. We're to be on with Clint Richardson right now for his show, and apparently his call was not accepted. I was just Skyping with him a minute ago. I'm not sure what happened. He's actually supposed to be interviewing me. Once again, this is Jan Irvin from the Gnostic Media Podcast here with you on RBN. And Clint was wanting to interview me this time on Christmas and the history of Christmas. I've done research on that history. I feel like I'm talking to myself and not quite sure where to go here. So hopefully Clint jumps in here real quick with us. But anyway, if anybody wants to throw me a save here, that would be really helpful. Let's see. Where is Clint? Maybe I can drag him into the call or something. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, so we were going to talk about the history of Christmas and the origins of the solstice celebrations, the New Year celebration, etc. And apparently all of you are hearing this. So, and I'm not talking to just myself. Anyway, so... any luck with getting Clint back?
Yes, I apologize. My whole computer system went down. I don't know what happened. So, I am here. I apologize, Jan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, no problem. Well, at least we're able to do things like that since we're both show hosts. It's easy to just, do what you got to do.
Yeah.
My only issue is I wasn't prepared for anything, to do it on my own. So then it was just kind of hanging there.
Well, I have full faith and confidence in your ability. Well, I'll tell you what I wanted to talk about today. I'll have a commercial here in a minute. Sorry, everybody's running around trying to fix this thing here. What we're going to be talking about today is what I really wanted to get into you with today was, of course, the origins of this strange holiday that we just went through. Of course, we sort of go through the motions of Christmas without really understanding what those motions actually represent historically, of course. And we do things that ordinarily we probably wouldn't do. For instance, our strange habitual Black Friday celebrations. These strange things where we get together and practically kill each other to get a cheap TV. Now, I guess how I wanted to introduce this today is just to say, look, what did we just go through? We need to have a sense of this word that has been flying around, which is consciousness. There's a sort of a new age kind of agenda going on right now with this word consciousness, and yet consciousness just means being aware of your actions. It doesn't mean you're going to fly through space and enter into some unknown origin of the universe that's going to suddenly turn on all of your DNA and suddenly we're all going to be conscious, loving human beings. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about waking up literally and educating ourselves to the motions that we go through. And you could really attach that to just about anything, from the military to the police to all of our customs and rituals, which a lot of us really have no concept of where they come from. And so that's why I invited you today. Of course, you're the author of several books, which I'm going to let you tell people about, since I lost all my information in front of
me. Well, you know, what I wanted to interject there is regarding consciousness. Consciousness is the antithesis of ignorance. Ignorance is when we ignore things and we're unaware of them, whereas to be conscious of something, we're aware of it. So it's awareness not only of our actions, but of those things around us. And so therefore, to be conscious or aware of something, you have to study it first before you assume you know what it is or says, or before you dismiss it without studying it first. You know, one of the most common things that happens to people like you and I in the research that we do, and I've known you, Clint, for years, is that, you know, people will, most of the attacks that we get on our work generally come from people who have never read it in any way, shape, or form. They just heard about it, and it doesn't jive with their current belief systems, so without ever studying it, they're going to, you know, send us an email or whatever and name call at us and all this sort of stuff. Am I wrong about that? Do you get that sort of thing too?
Well, yes and no. I mean, there are certain subjects that will take a lifetime to accomplish that study, including some of the stuff I do. I know I will never get to the bottom of some of my stuff, and so I'm going to offer my best, you know, to my best ability, the best explanation I can give in layman's terms, and often that's a dissatisfaction for people who, of course, have the beliefs, you know, that we're talking about. So yeah, it's a two-way street, definitely. It's a double-edged sword, trying to explain things that even you don't fully understand, of course, and that's the journey, the path of knowledge. And
for my research, you know, most of the people, you know, and coming from the field of ethnomycology and ethnobotany, which is the study of psychedelic plants and mushrooms, and having studied that field for about 20 years, most of the attacks I get are from what you would normally call hippies and New Agers who have never studied any of my work, and they're just offended by the idea that somebody like Gordon Wasson, who is considered by most to be the so-called discoverer of magic mushrooms, that he was actually in charge of, say, for instance, we know from now that he was the head of MKUltra Subproject 58. And we have the CIA documents. We have, you know, from MKUltra, we have personal letters between he and Alan Dulles. We know that he was involved in the intelligence community on many levels, including with the Soviet Union, etc. So, you know, we have to step away from, in this sense, step away from what we think we know about things just because it's our religious conviction, and, you know, look at the evidence without killing the messenger, without reacting with pure emotion first. You know, we need to take the information in, consider it, weigh it, and then, you know, once we've properly studied it, then we can make a decision on it. But most people, I find, in the case of this area of research in particular, they like to attack things that they have not looked at in any way whatsoever. So I want to encourage people to look at the research and study things, read the books, watch the videos, etc., before you leap to conclusions about things.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately that's what belief does, and that's what custom actually does. It becomes, after a while, I think one of the best examples of custom is the 100 monkeys in a room that won't touch the banana that's hanging there, because every time anytime a monkey goes to get the banana, the other monkeys beat him down. And, you know, it's been generations since the reason for that beating has ever happened, and yet the bananas know not to touch the banana. It's a sacred banana. You can't touch the banana. Why is that? Well, we'll find out when we get back after the break. A rocky start, but it'll be a wonderful show today. Thanks for joining us, and especially you, Jan. Thank you. We'll be back.
He's a
folks, welcome back. Hey, again, I want to thank you for joining me these just a couple days after Christmas. Also, my gracious co-host here, Jan Irvin, whom, by the way, was my first guest for show number 2, where we talked about some good stuff. And now you are actually, I believe, on show number 50, Jan. So happy.
Wow, you've already done 50 episodes. 50. That's amazing.
I know, it goes quick, man. It goes real quick.
Has it been that long since I've been on already? Wow.
Yeah, it's I guess about 2.5, 3 months now. So
was I on number 15 or something also, maybe, or is that somebody else?
Oh yeah. I forgot you did come on with what's her name that was in trouble with the law. Her husband was in trouble with the law.
Yeah,
forgot about that. Well. So I again, sort of throwing down the gauntlet here, and what we want to talk about tonight is the reasons why we go through a lot of these traditions, these customs. Christmas being the perfect example, and of course, the perfect guest to talk about that is Jan Irvin, for his deep research into the psychedelic movement, the mushrooms, and his kinship with John Allegro and all of those. Gentlemen who've done so much for uncovering this stuff, and it's a fascinating history. Again, one of my favorite films of Jan is from his book, actually, which is called The Pharmacratic Inquisition. You can find that on YouTube. It is free to watch, and highly recommend the book that goes along with it as
or
well.
Get the DVD from us.
Yeah, the DVD too. That's
selfless promotion of my stuff here.
Well, and like so many of us, you work for donations. You work for peanuts, and it's tough. So definitely, if you can, throw some money Jan's way for his excellent products. But today, we are talking about Christmas. Now, the question is, and a lot of people have this question, of course, is how the heck did we get from supposedly, and I'm not sure this ever actually even existed in the first place. It's really tough to know when you actually look at history. How do we go from a supposed birth of Christ day, celebrating the birth of a Christ, whatever that means to whoever is listening, how do we get from that to our present day celebration of Christmas? And how did Saint Nicholas, this gentleman from, I believe, the 4th century, how did he become such an integral part of this celebration?
Well, and I'm going to have to pull up St. Nicholas, but there's a whole lot of different tie-ins from when the Christian church, the Catholic Church, would go through certain areas rather than trying to just stomp everyone out. A lot of times they would amalgamate the traditions in that area and just sort of do a slow, soft merger of the ideas. And this happened in a lot of areas with the celebration of the Christmas tree and the idea of the packages. And we've argued, and Dr. Patrick Harding from England, from the University of Sheffield, has argued, and a number of others, that the traditions surrounding the Christmas tree itself actually have to do with the fungus, the Amanita muscaria mushroom that grows underneath it, and a lot of the traditions around that. And then this is where we get the symbol of the packages, and then the mushroom is red and white, and then it's a nice and big fat mushroom, and it goes around. If you pull it out of the ground, it's kind of got black boots, and the shaman would. It is said by a number of historians, the shaman would go around and deliver these mushrooms or trade them for the winter solstice celebrations. And this stuff centers around the winter solstice celebrations. There's the tree, the log, putting the candles on the tree is also part of the Yuletide celebrations. These all go back to the ancient Roman Saturnalian festivals, and all of these kind of amalgamate through history. But all over the world they had sort of similar types of celebrations. But what's interesting is that these packages and the Black Friday and running people over and killing people in the stores, that seems to stem at least in part from the origin of the mushrooms that were growing under the trees that were sort of the presents that were given. And then, we've looked at the idea more recently that, the field of ethnomycology was set up by Gordon Wasson to study how the shamans would actually mind control or keep the rest of the tribe under their control. And so, putting on these rituals and costumes and beating drums and things like that would cause, the rest of them to fall under this control. So, this could probably be seen with the mainstream media and all of the pumping up and using stars and idols and things like this to promote certain things, and people, standing in line for 3 days for a product and things like that. But these are ancient traditions that all center around the winter solstice. The reason why the evergreen tree is because it didn't die in the middle of winter. It stayed alive, so it was a symbol of something that could live through the coldest, darkest parts of winter and come out the other side. Now, what most people don't realize is that Christmas morning is actually the real New Year's Day. The church actually switched it on us and made it over to January 1st so that they could have their religion, and people wouldn't realize that the two were actually the same. And you'll have Chris White out there, who's an evangelist who goes around and tries to debunk astrotheology while distorting it, but he actually admits that he refuses to read any of the research, and he just goes back to reading his own stuff and ignoring the rest of it. And he's even taken photos of ours that were split screens from Christmas Eve at 6 p.m. and in the morning at 6 a.m. or at 5 a.m. on Christmas morning, and he'll go into his software not admitting that it's a split screen and show, oh, see, we're wrong. But if you go in and you look at our work, it's a split screen showing this stuff, and we can see that this is all based around the birth of the sun on Christmas morning. Now, when I say the birth of the sun, this guy sounds crazy. What does this mean? Well, anciently, they created allegories or stories around the stars. A lot of it had to do with the planting and the harvest season, and kings had to keep accurate time. There's a really good book, The Sun and the Church, that goes into how throughout history kings had to keep really accurate calendars on risk of death, etc., from the tribes all over the world. But imagine if your calendar was off, you might plant at the wrong time or harvest at the wrong time, etc. And they could also use moss and things like this to tell, but a lot of it, was having knowledge of the stars and the seasons. And so on the winter solstice, which was December 21st, the word solstice means essentially sun stands still in Latin. And the sun stops from our earthly perspective. It's not actually moving. It's the earth that's moving and wobbling. But
wobbling, yes.
Right. From our earthly perspective, the sun stops moving towards the south. And what happens is on December 21st, and for the next 3 days, the sun basically stays at the same point on the horizon. Every other day, we can see our cats or dogs moving on the floor, trying to keep up with the shadows where it's warm, or keep out of the shadows, etc., to get the sunlight. And so on December 21st to the 25th, there's very little movement. And I mean, an astrophysicist or whatever, they can, calculate and say, yes, there is movement. But for most people living 2,000 years ago by, line of sight, there wasn't much movement, and there still isn't for most of us today.
Absolutely. And, I've got a couple questions on that note for you when we come back. Stay with us. We got Jan Irvin from GnosticMedia.com here. We'll be back.
Up your lives through ideological hegemony. But if you think you need guns to stop tyranny, then what you waiting for? We've already stripped you of your liberty, privacy, civil rights, and dignity. You want some more?
Scientists have been battling to understand what this unappealing object is all about. What the object is all about.
Information in the form of energy streams in simultaneously through all of our sensory systems in the form of energy. All our sensory systems, and then it explodes into this enormous collage of what this present moment looks like, what it feels like, and what it sounds like. It explodes into this enormous collage.
All right, folks, welcome back. You're with Clint Richardson and Jan Irvin. I'm actually broadcasting live here in Rancho Cordova, California, the city that I grew up in. I should say the municipal corporation, since we are in the corporation nation.
It is the most mysterious.
And Jan, you're actually in a town that I actually spent a few years in, down in Southern California. I believe, at least I believe I was in Highland.
Yeah, that's about maybe 15, 18 minutes from here, and I'm just above Highland, right in the rim of the world, San Bernardino Mountains.
Oh yeah, that school district. Can't forget that.
Oh yeah, well yeah, and you did indeed do that investigation on the local school district here. So
good times. All right, well,
how can we forget that? You know, and in fact, we put. Hey, Clint, just to remind you, we put that out on the eve before Christmas break, exactly 2 years ago, before this Christmas break. So all of the teachers and everybody from the entire district were studying that video for Christmas break.
For Christmas. They're like, oh, great, hell for Christmas.
Yeah, and here we are back again. So how timely.
Still fighting the battles, man.
Let me just say, we should probably finish. We were talking about the Christmas tree and everything there. We should probably finish that up because that's kind of the key to a lot of that stuff, you know. So do you want me to just kick off?
Yeah, I mean, I hear that mushrooms just love Christmas trees.
Well, they do, but the issue here is that the tree is also the symbol of the world axis, or the Yggdrasil tree, and so it has the symbol of the the evergreen, the eternal life through the wintertime. So what happens is that I was discussing on December 21st, the sun essentially. To us dies, and those over I forget, it's in my book, we have the citation exactly, the 66.5 degree latitude line or something like that. Over that latitude line, it's basically dark, but everything below that, there's still light even though they can't see the sun. So people above that latitude line believed essentially that, if the sun kept going, life would cease to exist. So they lit the Yule log in celebration to carry us through that period of darkness where the sun didn't exist. And then what happens is on December 25th in the morning, the sun once again falls between the legs of Virgo and is the celestial virgin and is born again. And then, things start heading towards spring and summertime and warmth again. And the days from Christmas morning every day starts getting longer again. And so this, go ahead.
You're basically saying that we come to the death of the growing season, or the death of what you might call the life cycle, where the sun is even the lowest part of the sky, and so the days are the shortest.
Thanksgiving is even more ancient than that, celebrating essentially the harvest, right? And then you have Halloween, which is right there before that. That's the symbol of death, and Hallows Eve and all of that stuff at the harvest time, at the fall, and then at the winter time, the sun finally kicks off. It's going to its death, but now we're in the new sun. So technically, the new year has already begun. And then the Orthodox Church, they celebrate it. What is it, January 6th or 7th or whatever? But and then that's the real 12 days of Christmas is from the 25th to the Orthodox Christmas. But, so this whole period, though, is the birth of the new sun, and we are now in the real new solar year.
And again, that just simply means, it's a very simple concept when you take the mysticism out of it. It just means that now the sun on day 26 will rise a little higher in the sky, making the day a little longer. Therefore, the sun is rebirthing into its new seasonal life, basically.
Guess what, folks? And then Easter comes, and all the bunnies are out. And you know what bunnies do in the springtime?
Why, I believe they make more bunnies.
Right! Oh, Easter bunnies, springtime. Oh, it's so easy.
So are you suggesting that the Easter as an equinox as well is... a celebration
fertility ritual? No, I wouldn't suggest
a fertility ritual.
Of course it is.
Well, and I know, you mentioned on one of your presentations, I remember, that Easter just happens to be a full gestation period of human development.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for reminding me about that. You're reminding me of stuff that I wrote in a book that we published almost a decade ago. So
yeah, so
I'm like having to flip through going, oh my God, I'm doing a radio show on Christmas. I got to watch my own videos and read my own books again to even remember. Right? It's like,
I understand how that is, trust me. So, but Easter being a 9-month celebration of life, basically, of the creation of life, the harvest,
sure.
and everything else.
Sure. So what we have is the Immaculate Conception. So we have a 365-day year. Then you have the Immaculate Conception, and then you have 49 days to the Pentecost. Then you have 9 months to birth at Christmas Day. So the Son is incepted on what did I just say it was? The Immaculate Conception happens at Easter, and then the Son is born on Christmas. So, Jesus is incepted and then is born. It doesn't just happen. But but and of course the Virgin is the celeste, the constellation of Virgo, the Virgin, and this is all stuff that's taking place in the sky. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to mention that I'm really excited to have a good friend of mine on. I've known this guy for years. His name is Randy Mabe. He's coming up to my place tomorrow morning, and we're going to do a whole session on astrotheology. This guy took, some of my work that I wrote in astrotheology and shamanism that we published, I republished it in 2009 and first came out in 2005. But this guy took that research and some other people's, and he just took it 10 times further. And so he's really come up with some amazing stuff. And I mean, he's got like pretty much the whole biblical story laid out. And so he'll be coming up tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have that out by the end of the year to really go into Randy's new research. And he was hoping to have a book out last year, but he's still working on it. So much to be discovered still. Every time you think you're done with a book, you find more,
Well, and that's, and the sooner you realize that, the quicker you drop your ego and everything else that goes along with learning, and teaching. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing. But okay, so we go along each year. We go out. We ironically we used to go out. At least my family used to go out. We used to go up to the mountains. We used to cut our own tree, and of course that symbolizes an act of doing something that we fully didn't, of course, understand as a family. We just knew that it was a custom and a ritual, and we would go and do that. We would go and we'd put that tree into on top of the car, like the Griswold family Christmas, and we would, put it into a Christmas tree holder. We'd give it a colorful skirt, and we would then proceed to decorate that tree, as millions or hundreds of millions of Americans do, and in fact, people do all around the world. And yet, the whole time, I never stopped to ask why. I never thought of saying, well, what exactly are we doing this for? Why do you want to take me into the mountains, cut down a tree, kill the tree, put it into a vase of water, and then hang little things on it? Why in the heck would I want to do that? And it turns out that there's a very, very logical, reasonable, and it turns out historically documented, history of that. So let's get into that.
Yeah, well, apparently, these same shamans that we were talking about earlier that would find these mushrooms under the tree. Well, I mean, wet mushrooms are very heavy, and the Amanita, and I don't really recommend anyone take the Amanita muscaria. They're very inebriating, and they can make you sweat and vomit. And for most people, they can take them 100 times before they'll learn how to have one or two good experiences with them. So they're nothing like, the other types of so-called magic mushrooms. But the Siberians, some of the tribes have used them traditionally for this stuff. But when these guys would pick these things, they would trade them, and they're quite heavy when they're wet. So you would find a place to dry them out, and why not just put them right on the boughs of the tree, right? The tree's tall. You're just picking them from underneath the tree, so you just pick them from underneath, and you hang them on the tree to dry, and then you come back around and you pick them all up. after they've dried for a while out in the sun.
Well, and am I correct that they also happen to grow under that very same tree?
Under the very same tree.
Which is a conifer, right? A pine.
Right.
Yeah.
Pine, cedar, birch, fir, etc.
All right. We'll be back, folks. Stay with us. Jan Irvin of GnosticMedia.com. Sounds like an interesting interview you got coming out, too, on your podcast. We'll be back.
Is this real? Or is this just a ride? The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The world is like a ride. You think it's real? It's just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. Ride goes up and down, round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored. Up and down, round and round, it's very loud.
Irvin of Gnostic Media. We're talking about the miraculous appearance and preservation of the magic mushroom in history, and that includes biblical history, that includes shamanistic history from countries around the world, and most importantly, it includes Christmas. Now, I love the story of, including the Easter, and you kind of have to wonder how Easter and Christmas kind of bond together. And we talked about that it's a 9-month gestation period from Christmas, or from Easter to Christmas, of course, Immaculate Conception, which just happened to take 9 months. And you see that children were actually going out and collecting Easter eggs, or what we refer to now as the symbolic mushroom, which is the Easter egg. And they would,
well, sure, and the irony there is that the mushroom in one of its stages is very phallic looking, but in many cultures, such as even in England and in parts of England today, they still celebrate with the maypole, right? And that's, the maypole is the phallic, and then you have the symbol of the yoni of the people dancing around it. So this is a whole fertility ritual. But, the egg is obviously a symbol of fertility, right? And so then you have the children underneath the trees. Another stage of the mushroom that we also show in the book and in the documentary is that it does, in fact, look like, the mushroom in its first stage looks like an egg, or in one of its early stages looks like an egg. And so, they're going under the bushes collecting these fertility symbols that are the mushrooms, and then, this... probably because the children are small and they can get under the trees and brush a lot easier than the grown-ups, they would have the children early on do these types of celebrations. Now, I do want to point out that there is a lot of evidence to show that the shamans were often, the controllers and the manipulators and the tricksters and hucksters of the group, and the leading sophist, or your typical dirty politician type today. So. A lot of people, when they, due to Esalen and Terrence McKenna and Gordon Wasson, and I said earlier that Gordon Wasson was in charge of MK Ultra Subproject 58, and we've exposed all of that. The documents are up on the Gnostic Media website. People can read the articles right on the front page down at the bottom if they want to see more information on that. But they need to realize that this stuff was sold for control. Now, during the break, I was discussing Professor David Price's research, and he's written books on weaponizing anthropology, and his research on Gregory Bateson. Gregory Bateson was an anthropologist who was married to Margaret Mead, and he was involved in Project MK Ultra. He was involved in the Macy Foundation conferences that started the CIA's Project MK Ultra. And so he was one of the key founders, along with Aldous Huxley and some of these other people behind that. But anyway, this weaponizing anthropology stuff that Price has revealed showed that the Soviet government would take the shamanic cultures and then bash them against the regular Russian people to control both. And that is exactly what we see here. And what we also see is an intentional direction of all of the research in this field towards either the East or to South or Central American shamanism, and people like John Allegro who took the study up seriously in Judeo-Christianity. The CIA went after him. So and we've done a lot of research. My last book, The Holy Mushroom, that I published in 2008, revealed how it was Gordon Wasson who launched all of the attacks against Allegro. And in 2012, we published finally the final documents and everything that we needed to prove. And this last year, that he was in fact CIA. Still there? Anyone?
Correct me if I'm wrong. That was manufacturing the deadhead.
There was a couple of articles. The last article that we published last May was manufacturing the deadhead. It goes into more evidence on Wasson and some of those the newer links that have just come out. And the previous one that people can go to my website up on the banner on the top. It's The Secret History of Magic Mushrooms, and it's the first article. R. Gordon Wasson, the man, the legend, the myth, beginning a new history of magic mushrooms, ethnomycology, and the psychedelic revolution. And that was May 13, 2012. And so, all of this stuff ties together, and there's a whole lot of primary documentation in there. And, going back to those people who attack your research who've never read it, they've had a psychedelic experience or two, and then they think, well, I couldn't have been tricked or fooled, so therefore Jan Irvin must be crazy. And they're basically conditioned to ignore any of the evidence or citations, and it all came from major university archives and the CIA directly. So,
well, this is it's very difficult, especially if you participated or you've heard the stories of your parents who participated in the free love hippie movement. That could possibly have been a controlled science, that was a controlled movement to create a certain outcome.
Sure.
And it was also very successful. That's the other.
Well, let me put it this way, just so people get this. Gordon Wasson, the so-called discoverer of magic mushrooms, he was the vice president of propaganda for J.P. Morgan. Okay, and he was close friends for at least a decade that we know of, from the personal letters of Edward Bernays himself, that he was a close friend of Edward Bernays. And so, this is the real Gordon Wasson. We also know, like I said, we have letters between Wasson and Alan Dulles. We know that he was a member of the Century Club with Alan Dulles and Eisenhower and Huxley and a bunch of these other guys, and there are a bunch of agents and bankers, et cetera, out of the Century Club. So this guy was really hooked in and really dirty, and we do have... if people want to go to the MK Ultra documents, Wasson, right there in the project listings, look up MK Ultra Subproject 58, and you'll see J.P. Morgan and the American Philosophical Association. That was, and you'll see Wasson's own writing requesting the $2,000 from the Geschichter Fund that went through, that Alan Dulles himself approved.
Well, and this again is the point. Before you take a step and you follow a movement, or before you follow a clique or a crowd or an ideal or an ism, any ism, especially what we've been talking about lately with the Lark and Nikki Rapana, which is communitarianism, sort of a combination of all of these isms. Before you step off that cliff, before you join a movement, you darn well better look at some of these other movements. In fact, I would probably say, if I were to guess, I would probably say any revolution of any significance in history, before you and see the actual origins of it, like Jan.
They're all controlled and contrived, they're totally manufactured and created.
And so we always go back here, at least on my show. I always try to get back to the most important concept, is that the revolution is in your mind, and your mind only. One person, not a group. You're never going to have a group revolution.
It's not
You're
group
only going to have a...
so caught into the groupthink idea that, we need to form a group to do something. And, it's like, how about you just act as you need to act and do the things that you need to do, and, the next person. But when you get back into the groupthink idea, well, a group can also be co-opted as a group and corrupted as a group.
Well, what could be more self-defeatist?
Right, and you and I in episode 2 on your show discussed the Trivium, and people can go to Trivium education.com if they would like more information, all of that. But that, also reveals how all of these tricks and things work. So if you get the trivium, then you can go through and you can see how, you're being manipulated. And, the biggest issue that people have when they're coming into this field of research is that they have an idea that, no, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, nobody could have tricked me, I couldn't have, no way I could have tricked myself. And then they think with a lot of fallacies rather than looking at the research and citations and just checking them and having trust in their senses. So they'll dismiss things just out of hand, right?
Well, I think that...
Hold on. My point here is, though, if people can learn to just laugh things off and be like, you know what, that was really good, that was brilliant, you got me, but you know what, it's not going to happen again.
Yeah. Well, I think language itself was a revolution. We've covered on this show in triplicate, and we'll continue to do so, of the legal language compared to the conversational language. And you have a language of a secret society that controls you. Until you understand that, until you can use the trivium properly in the correct language, if you think you know the language, well, then you're going to be you're losing the battle before you even start. We'll be back, folks. Stay with us with John Irvin.
Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel. Who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men. Machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Corporation Nation. I'm your host, Clint Richardson, here on Republic Broadcasting Network.com. My guest today is Jan Irvin of GnosticMedia.com, and actually many other websites, including TriviumEducation.com, and so many others. How do I dare list them all? But they're all on his main website, which is GnosticMedia.com. You can listen to his podcasts and interviews that happen there, which I highly recommend. And let's get back into our discussion. Now, today's discussion is not to offend or defend or anything else. It is just to present a little bit of historical knowledge to allow us to actually think about the choices and things that we do in our own lives, our everyday lives, some of the customs that we participate in and really never consider what it is we're exactly doing. And so, Christmas and Easter are two of those things. And again, one of the first questions I think most people have is, how the heck did it get to be so far away from what we think it's supposed to be, which is, of course, a religious holiday or a religious celebration, and get into this whole thing about flying reindeer, pulling a sled, and bringing gifts down a chimney, and Santa Claus dressed in red and white and black boots, very similar to the red and white mushroom-shaped cloth that the Pope and other political and religious figures wear in various religions. It's just a fascinating topic to me, and I'm very pleased that Jan Irvin's here to discuss that with me. So I hear that reindeer, kind of like pigs can be called to find truffles, that reindeer absolutely love a good mushroom.
Well, it's funny. Pigs can actually smell stuff 25 feet underground, so they use pigs to dig up truffles, which are underground mushrooms. But, the reindeer are known to have a fondness of certain types of mushrooms, and including Amanita muscaria, the proverbial carrot on a stick. You can use a, mushroom on a stick to get reindeer to work and things like that. But, reindeer were also known to get piss drunk, and then the shaman would drink the urine of the reindeer to get inebriated to avoid, the sickness from the mushrooms, and they would also recycle their own urine, and sometimes they would say, the shaman would get them to recycle his so that he could keep control of the inebriating experience, making people think that he had, some divine power to make his urine, inebriating or something. But so yeah, this is, the story of the flying reindeer is not just from me, but like I said, people like Patrick Harding. There's another researcher, Patrick. Now I'm forgetting his name. He wrote another book on the history of Christmas Unwrapped, or something like that. That might be Dr. Patrick Harding's book. But anyway, there are a number of these books that go into the history of this and how that is likely related to the mushroom, and like we discussed earlier, Santa being big and round and fat and red and white, just like the mushroom, and he goes ho ho ho, just like somebody drunk under the intoxication of the mushrooms. And then today we discussed earlier about how near was actually Christmas and how the 2 days were separated. So today we celebrate the new year, or what would in ancient times been Saturnalia. We celebrate that on what is January 1st now under the Gregorian calendar. So this is the day now when everybody goes out and gets pissed drunk, right? And so this is the celebration of the day that they've marked for us to be the real New Year day, not because then the church couldn't function if we knew that Christmas was the real New Year's day. So they just gave us another day a week later to get drunk at, and that's essentially what that was about. And eventually, and even today, the church eventually adopted the tree and everything in as well. From the Yule and, all of these more ancient traditions, just because it was easier to amalgamate traditions than to constantly fight people.
Well, how far back in history can we go and actually see Christmas trees? I mean, will we find them, for instance, mentioned in the Founding Fathers' documents as Christmas time approaches? Will we go back to the colonies and find Christmas trees? I mean, how far back do we actually go? Now, I understand
the colonies for sure. And that's then I do remember researching that at one time, and that's a really good question because I cannot remember the answer. I could, go pull 3 or 4 or 5 books off the shelf and probably get you an answer in a half an hour or so, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
I'll go do it. I'll stall. And,
well, you know what though? Why don't you stall for a minute? And I'm going to go grab those books anyway, just so that I have them here for quick reference. So go ahead and blather for a second, and and I'll be as fast as I can, everyone. I promise.
All right. Well, and I do the same thing all the time. That's why I put so much research online in my blog. It's not so much for people to read as much as for me to have as a reference later on. What I was thinking just now, though, was that the story of... It's interesting when you go, of course, on the alternative or the outside of the accepted religious doctrines of each church, and you actually discover the history of each event that happened.
That wasn't so bad, was it?
No. What you find is, according to Dr. A. Truott's research, is that Joseph Smith of the Mormon Church also just happened to be, when he found his plates, his golden plates, which were the message of God and all, it just also happened to be around the specific tree.
Well,
which underneath grows the magic mushroom.
Let me just read you what we published on Joseph Smith and astrotheology and shamanism for those who are interested in that. And by the way, what inspired all of this research was John Allegro, and I am the publisher of John Allegro's famous book, The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, and his website is johnallegro.org. But Joseph Smith, he is, as you just said, Joseph Smith, who in Mormon mythology discovers the golden plates atop pillars in a forest, no doubt under a tree, dried amanita is very often bright golden color. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I interviewed this guy. He's the head of the Native American Okluvueha Church, James Flying Eagle Mooney. And this guy, and he came on, let me see if I can find this show. This guy, he was doing a research investigation with a doctor from Utah, and it's Dr. Robert Beckstead and James Warren Flying Eagle Mooney, the Mormons, Joseph Smith's psychedelic voyage, and these two, and one of them being the head of one of the branches of the Native American Church, were investigating Joseph Smith's entire use of psychedelics and how he used it initially to control and manipulate the Mormons.
As sort of a shamanistic. When we get back, I want you to actually explain that, from what I've understood anyway, that people have a very similar religious experience on specific entheogens and psychedelics. So we'll be back, folks. Stay with us with you on Irvin.
How's the people living in the street? Oh, there's a solution.
Hey, neighbor. Welcome again to this neighborhood. I'd like to show you something. You know what this is? Or maybe if I press this button. There are so many things to learn about in this world, and so many people who can help us learn, and so many people who can help us learn. Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind?
Well, let's not waste any time here. Let's get right back to on here. We're talking about the origins of many, actually, religions that seem to have the same experiential beginnings, where there's the same type of what we call entheogens or psychedelics that entrance the taker. In this case, we're talking about Joseph Smith, into a similar, if not exact, religious experience. So you said you had some more on that.
Yeah, well, Joseph Smith in one of his books, and I just closed my book. I forget which one I took it out of. It's cited in there in my book, Astrotheology and Shamanism. Upon the pillars rested the plates, which shone like bright gold. I saw also lying in the box a round body wrapped in a white substance. And, of course, the mushroom, the Amanita muscaria, has a white veil or shroud that covers it in its early stages. And this I knew to be the ball or directors which so many years ago guided Leahy and his family to this land. The top stone of the box was smooth on the inner surface, as were the others, but on the top it was rounded. From the bottom of the box, or from the breastplate, and they're also very often associated with breasts, these big red mushrooms, arose three small pillars. Okay, mounted on top pillars, anyone? Composed of the same description of cement used on the edges. And it's funny, like the cement, when you think of all of the allegory and how these things are often referred to throughout history, it's like the white spots, the cement, all of this kind of stuff that covers these bright red and white spotted mushrooms. But these three pillars were not so lengthy as to cause the plates and the crowning stones, again, a reference to the spots on the top, to come into contact. And that's from Joseph Smith. Now, going to this word that you just mentioned, and we're talking about religion and spiritual experience and all of this, and I did mention before the break my interview with Dr. Robert Beckstead and James Warren Flying Eagle Mooney, the Mormons' Joseph Smith's psychedelic voyage that reveals that. That was Gnostic Media's episode number 80. But, what I also wanted to talk about is, one, people should really understand that mysticism is the tool of tyrants. And so, you cued into it right there, what they've done, and I bought into it for a long time. I'll admit that I thought that the visionary experience was possibly real, and it could be. There's aspects of the quadrivium, when you get into quadrivium studies, that shows things are possible, but I don't think it's how they write about it in the books to lead us along. But, in the 1950s, every CIA agent was required to trip, and it really didn't turn the agency into a bunch of hippies, at least as we commonly think of them. And the military called entheogens or psychedelics, they called them by a word psychotomimetic, which means psychosis mimicking. And essentially, what they would do is they would label the experience, and then you would have the experience that they labeled. Now, Timothy Leary, in I think it was 1979, in a video that we have, a conversation on LSD, to quote him, he's talking about their undercover agents. And this is quoting Timothy Leary. All right, our undercover agents were very cool about, and yet they did a lot more in a very laid-back way, and it's every bit as public as some of the others, the buses running around the country. In other words, he's referring to Ken Kesey and the Merry Pranksters as his undercover agents, and they're all agents. And he's there with Oscar Yoniger and Humphrey Osmond. Now, Humphrey Osmond, this is key because Humphrey Osmond invented the word psychedelic. And in the book Moksha from Aldous Huxley, they admit in there that Humphrey Osmond and Aldous Huxley, who we both know were MI6 and CIA, they both went to Harvard and they hired Leary to do this job. And Leary here, I just read the quote, he admits that he's an undercover agent. And so essentially Osmond, he created the word psychedelic, and then they remarketed it from psychotomimetic. They turn it into the word psychedelic, which means to manifest the mind. And then they hire Leary to go out and do his thing. And then
to make it cool.
To make it cool. But, what do? Then they tell everybody, Leary ruined the name psychedelic from Humphrey Osmond, even though Humphrey Osmond hired him to do that. Never mind that fact. Never mind that both of them were agents. And so obviously they both were working for the same agenda. Duh. So then afterwards, after this all happens, Gordon Wasson, again, the same guy, MK Ultra Subproject 58, who we know for a fact now was CIA, got together with Professor Carl Ruck of Boston University and Jonathan Ott and Jeremy Bigwood, and they invented the name then entheogen to remarket it yet again a third time. And entheogen means to generate God within. So this time they want to put the nail in the coffin and really push it as far as they can towards the religion. And then, what's interesting is we revealed in a recent paper that, this book, Road to Ulysses, that Wasson and Professor Ruck wrote together, it was actually a government-sanctioned religion where two families controlled the whole of society for like 2,000 or 4,000 years. And so, when they talk about the mysteries, and again, mysticism is the tool of tyrants. When they talk about, the mysteries and pushing us back to that and how it's all a good spiritual thing, be careful because, the predator uses these tricks. It doesn't matter if, in fact, it is a spiritual experience, because while you're there, you're going to get robbed and raped and murdered, as will your family. And so you can think, we're all just one and it's all peace and love and everything. But you know what? To whose benefit does that kind of thinking benefit? And you need to think, you need to stop using cliches. You need to stop being led around with fallacies and look at the facts, study things before you decide what it says, and then base all of your decisions soundly on looking at the information and not just leaping to false conclusions. So
just to be clear, entheogen, that term literally means to, if I'm mistaken here, to create God within.
Right. Now let me read you something from Oscar Janiger, who's one of the famous LSD researchers of the day. And this is from that same video where Leary just admitted he was an undercover agent, as were Kesey and the others. Oscar Janiger says, then Zenberg says that the visionary experience and all of those things he was doing at Harvard and the others, his residents, and the rest he was doing, and the rest he was giving LSD to, they never had a visionary or ecstatic or mystic experience. That whole thing was a California invention, he said. Leary replies, they are right. Janiger says, the only time it happened was when you crossed the Colorado River. And then the room breaks out into laughter. And this is a whole room full of agents here that were involved with it.
So we're pointing to the whole California thing with the Doors and all the Dave McGowan.
Oh yeah, Dave McGowan and my article, Manufacturing the Deadhead, where we exposed all of this stuff. And 8 years ago, when we were writing ANS and when I did the original video, in 2008, 2009 on Christmas, we didn't have these keys yet, but it was in 2009 that we got the Trivium when Gino Denny episode 49 through 51, he came on my show and presented all of that stuff. And then suddenly we were able to start seeing how they were using this stuff for mind control.
And let's just be clear.
A lot of people think mind control is, this guy's wacky, mind control. Ooh, that sounds so out there. But a lot of people need to realize that, mind control can be something so easy as getting you to think with your emotions or getting you to ignore facts or to kill the messenger and just to avoid or ignore things and not base your decisions on the facts.
The truth is that much of it has to do with language control. If you can use a language that people don't even know exists, and it sounds just like the language they use every day, then there's no way that you can use the Trivium. And to be clear, folks, the Trivium at triviumeducation.com, would you say that it was presented? We're talking about logic, reason, and grammar here. We're not talking about anything wondrous and mighty, although that's exactly what it is, because it does...
Grammar, logic, rhetoric.
All right, we'll be back, folks. Stay with us.
Derivatives, quantitative easing, trade imbalances, recession, low GDP, nations close to collapsing, and subprime loans, foreclosed homes, and people's taxes spent to bail out too big to fail AAA banks again. Fear levels rising as a US crash seems imminent, having smashed the debt ceiling of 14 trillion. Despite protests and clashes in Athens streets, the IMF imposed structurally unjust programs in Greece, where in fact the term economy entered our language from the Greek oikonomia, meaning household management. Well, how are we managing? Theories abound, but in practice, does anyone actually know what the hell's even...
All right, folks, welcome back. You're in the Corporation Nation, and we are with Jan Irvin today, GnosticMedia.com, here on RepublicBroadcasting.org. Thanks for joining us today. And again, I'm just here for one show this week. I'm going to be out again next week. Monday, we're going to have Deanna Spingola. Is going to be here for your listening pleasures. Tuesday and Wednesday, I have it under good authority. Lark is going to be back. Lark in Texas with, hopefully with Nikki Rapana from up there in her yurt in Alaska, talking about communitarianism. And again, this is a subject that has really sparked a note of necessity for everybody to learn. I think Lark has been well justified in his screaming that from the mountaintop for so many years. And of course, Bert will be back on Thursday for his replacement of me that day, and then Friday, who knows? Who knows what could happen Friday? Jan. Jan's been. I don't know if he wants to talk about this or not, but because of all his efforts that he has done. He has figured out the way that the surveillance grid works with the social media, especially with Facebook, of course, and has been literally been he's been outed, and now people are messing with him. People who've donated to him have stopped donating, and he's outed them as it's just an amazing off-air story that we're having, and when you get it's just proof. That's in the pudding that when you get close, and you start getting close to that truth, that the CIA is literally the terrorist organization of the United States, there to monitor and protect the United States against what it would deem us as terrorists.
Central Mind Control Agency, right?
Yeah, exactly. You start to see... things that Jan is seeing now, which is people coming, because they're not happy about the fact that you've exposed all this stuff. They're not happy at all that you've literally unwrapped their package and exposed what it is.
No, they're not happy about it. And you mentioned Facebook. I mean, there's so many agents and whatnot that, when in the last article, Manufacturing the Deadhead, we exposed that they had put Hank Albarelli on me for 2 years to mislead my research. And Hank Albarelli worked at the White House for the Carter administration, and he was formerly at the Treasury Department. So, I mean, they put guys all the way at the all the way at the top on
people that are actually donating to you, though, right?
But so get this. I've figured out lately Facebook, you have your regular user login, right? And then my feeling, and I've never actually seen it, I have no primary evidence of this yet, but here's how I think it works. I think the intel agents, and they don't have to be at some office in Langley or wherever. They can be at home. It doesn't matter. They can be anywhere. And so what they do is they have their own logins. And then, I'm a former network administrator, so, you can just imagine different sets of permissions and rules for different groups of people. Your average user is going to have all of these settings and things that they can see. Let's just say over on the right bar where the ads are, let's say if they put instead of the ads there for the intel people who log in, they put something else there, like keywords that they're having the website search. So when all of the agent guys, the disinformation agents, and we call them, the stick with stupid agents. Recently I interviewed a mutual friend of ours, General Albert Stubblebine, and he's the former commander general of the Army's INSCOM, which is the Global Army Intelligence. And he admitted, yes, this is a tactic, this whole stick with stupid thing. So what they do is they look for keywords, and then or the Facebook alerts them of these keywords, and then where the conversation is, and they either try and friend you and join your page, or if they're already in there, they will intentionally start the disinformation campaign. Now, you can spot them because they're people who under any circumstance refuse to look at any evidence whatsoever. They always stick with any amount of name-calling, fallacious attack, anything but using any modicum of intelligence to look at the evidence. No evidence, no amount of intelligence is permitted because they are paid disinformants, right? So they have an agenda. They have a sheet in front of them, the people when the low-level people when you call the phone company, and they got a little sheet that they read down of, you call Microsoft to get your computer fixed. Have you is your computer plugged in? Have you turned on the monitor? Have you done this? So this is their kind of script, but it's all stick with stupid stuff. It's all fallacious reasoning. It's all avoiding the evidence and documents and all of this kind of stuff. So what they do though is they have these guys all over the place that attack anyone who tries to put out real research. And
stick with stupid was actually a document. I mean, it's actually the title of a document that was put out. Correct?
I didn't see a document named that. I know there was one thing that was related to it, but I just started calling it stick with stupid. I don't know. I could be wrong, but maybe you had seen a document or something. But I just started calling it that. I had just started calling it that because, and after a while when you start doing this stuff and you can see them, because generally the honest people, if they buy into the stick with stupid stuff from others, usually they'll come around, 6 months down the road, they'll admit they're wrong or something like this. But, there's a group of these people that go around doing this whole stick with stupid agenda, and it's always the same group of them. They're always in a flock. There might be some new ones coming in. But once you know this program and how they operate, it makes them ineffective, because, once we stop thinking with fallacies and stopping to allow others to manipulate us with fallacies, then we can just trust our own five senses to go check what a citation says and go, oh, yep, this is true or it's false. Oh, yes, there is truth. And yes, there is false. And so
that's the hardest part for me. That was the hardest part for me, was to not take every email and treat it like a delicate flower and say, oh, this person, obviously they don't understand. I'm going to spend a half an hour explaining it to them. Oh, look, here's another delicate flower. I better spend an hour explaining it to them. No. You remember those advertisements on Facebook when the CIA was recruiting disinformation agents on Facebook? Yeah, right. That's what those are. So also, I kind of dig what you said before, because I've noticed that spam is also a very well-organized thing where you'll get the same type of writing that makes is gibberish, but inside the gibberish are keywords. And so if you're just clicking spam, or you're just saying, hey, I'm not going to read that, you just leave it unread, whatever, it's still there. It's still trackable. It's still traceable to your computer. So these are literally codes that are being embedded into your email and into your websites. It's really an amazing system.
Yeah, and that's why, when people really need to be able to protect themselves from this stuff and these codes from getting into your systems, we really need to learn Linux and the open source world, because then you can get in and you can monitor every single code. You can get all the way down to the processor and the kernel and everything that's happening, every string of data, every, on and off of the data that's going through there. And whereas obviously Microsoft and Apple don't want you to have any of that ability. So, what happens is it's in our ignorance and our not knowing how to get down to the core level and learn these things and do them that makes us even more vulnerable to it. So on the other side of that now, at least, there's these $35 computers coming out of England, the Raspberry Pi, that only run on Linux, and everything for them is free. And you can get all the way down and learn every single level of how a computer operates, what makes a light work, what makes this do that. Oh, look, here's some traffic going through my computer that I don't like. I'm going to completely remove all of this stuff. And you know what? There's nobody there in the open source world to tell you that you can't, that you have to leave something in there to spy on you.
It's sacrilege, my friend. Sacrilege. Pure, unadulterated sacrilege you're talking. We ought to put you to death, I think, as soon as possible for what you're talking. Yeah. Well, okay, so we've covered a lot of things here, but I do want to ask you this all important question here. We talked about Saint Nick. Saint Nick, by the way, was listed in one of your presentations as the patron saint of children, prostitutes, thieves, and sailors.
Right.
Which I thought was really, really quite funny. So, of course, when your children make cookies for Santa and leave him some milk, you might want to make sure your children are in bed when and there's a lock on their door when he comes.
Right. And before the end, let's make sure we mention those books. Here, real quick, Tony Van Rentergem, When Santa Was a Shaman, was another one, and we'll mention the others when we get back.
All right, sounds good, man. Stay with us. Quickly to the end of the show. As always, there's just never enough time to cover all the points. Jan, you were mentioning a few other books that would be good for people to read to really get an idea and a more full comprehension of how this mushroom theology basically flows from the Christmas spectacle.
Sure, and none of these are totally comprehensive, so there's 3 or 4 that at least that should be read here. So I mentioned When Santa Was a Shaman by Tony Van Rentergem, and then Dr. Patrick Harding's book, and again, he's from the University of Sheffield, and his book is called Christmas Unwrapped, and then The Physics of Christmas by Roger Highfield, and then my book, Astrotheology and Shamanism. All of these go into it, and they all, builds. You'll get a much broader picture if you get into all of them, and then all of these books together are, the video that we discussed at the beginning that I put out in 2008.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I started sort of a tradition here, and it wasn't just because. It was actually because I noticed that other family members, when we got together at Christmas, were struggling to buy gifts for each other and for all the kids. And so I kind of convinced my mom, and we made a rule that we weren't going to exchange gifts anymore at Christmas time, because, again, the process of this is something that's just been created to make us buy more gifts. Lots of trinkets and plastic pieces that just aren't needed. And so we, for the last 4 or 5 years, have not been exchanging gifts at least publicly, at our Christmas thing. We don't look forward to going into the other room and exchanging gifts. We don't, there's nothing under the tree for the family that comes over, and we actually have a wonderful, wonderful family experience, and we really actually celebrate us and ourselves, and we have a really good time. And I gotta tell you, that's the best Christmas I could ask for, compared to getting the Star Wars mountain with all the Star Wars action figures and all that stuff. I would much prefer it this way than to watch people have to struggle and try to exchange their gifts that they don't want and all that stuff. It's the whole thing is set up, of course, what I'm saying, as a consumer holiday, just like any other holiday
Sure.
that's been warped.
Well, everything about it is co-opted and things like that. It is, regarding the change of the seasons and the beginning of the new year, and we can still celebrate that and whatnot. And being a parent, I still do enjoy, seeing the excitement of my son, opening presents and stuff, but at the same time, I see the other side of it. But, we hopefully try to get him things that he's going to be able to build from intellectually throughout his life, and not just junk toys that he saw in a movie and things like that.
So you throw a mushroom in his stocking and tell him the truth.
A lump of coal, and so it's funny too. His local hardware store was selling lumps of coal with little wrapped lumps of coal for Christmas stockings.
Well, and I believe that along with St. Nicholas, we had Pan.
And that's some good stuff right there, boy. I was wondering if you're going to bring that up.
Yeah, well, he would be there as the sort of the dark figure along Santa Claus.
Sure,
right?
Santa Claus's dark helper. That's Pan, the Pan Hearn figure, and he goes all the way back to the ancient shaman figure. And in fact, I think When Santa Was a Shaman by Renter Jim is the best book for seeing all of that stuff. And then when you get in and research the classical stuff on the Pan and Hearn and all of the sex and fertility worship and Saturnalian worship and everything, then you get the real, you start to build a real picture of what was really happening. And, essentially the winter celebrations were just a time of licentious behavior where everybody went wild and got drunk and partied and had wild sex. And so I think Rome even banned it after a while. But, so that's the origins of this Pan Hearn figure, and he goes all the way back to the old, fertility rituals and things like that as well.
It's just such a glorious history. I had one other question for you. The history and origin of the caduceus.
Oh, well, boy, that's a fun one. The caduceus, there's a few different levels of the symbol, and the caduceus, for those of you who don't know, there are two different forms of it. There's one with two snakes, that's the symbol of your doctor, and there's one with one snake, that's the symbol of your chiropractor or your ambulance driver, etc. And actually, the one that the chiropractor and ambulance driver use is the real caduceus, symbol of medicine, staff of Asclepius, while the other is the symbol of Mercury and the symbol of thieves and tyrants and things like that. And so, that's why you see the second one with two snakes over like Las Vegas casino doors and things like that. But the caduceus is probably, anciently speaking, it would originate all the way back to possibly removing tapeworm from underneath the skin and wrapping it around a pencil and slowly, pulling it out or a stick, slowly pulling it out little by little every day. And then they would, this became the symbol of medicine. Also, the serpent sheds its skin, and, so it's, the serpent is poisonous, the snake is poisonous, it sheds its skin, so this is also related to the symbol of medicine. The staff of Asclepius had two snakes, and one kills the other, if I recall the story correctly. And that's why Asclepius only has one serpent, even though there's two. But, so there's a few different origins of the story, but it even comes up in the Christmas tree, and it comes up in, the Kabbalah, in the Kabbalah, the energy, now I'm forgetting what it's called off the top of my head, that rises up to the point of Keter, the crown. It is the serpent energy, and it basically takes a path similar to the caduceus. And then the Christmas tree, when you wind the lights or the popcorn or the paper chain or whatever around the tree, that is also symbolizing the caduceus that goes up to the wings on top. So when you put the wings of the angel above, and then you entwine the tree with this thing going up to the top, you are symbolizing the as above, so below of the of the caduceus or the Ouroboros, the winged Ouroboros as well. And so, the winged caduceus is the symbol of as above, the wings above, and the serpent is the chthonic realm or below. And
this also goes back to, there's so much more we could talk about today, of course. A lot of this is on Jan's site at GnosticMedia.com. Again, the Pharmacratic Inquisition, a highly recommended video that you can either buy or I believe still watch for free, which is a companion to his book. Also, The Holy Mushroom is available. Also, John Allegro's work and a few other books, Astrotheology and Shamanism, all available on Jan's website. The Pharmacratic Inquisition is one that I definitely recommend. One last thing, real quick.
What's that?
The mushroom as the Holy Grail.
What about it? There's certainly a lot of evidence that points in that direction, that the blood of the Holy Grail, because these mushrooms in their mature state, they actually, and we show this in the book as well, and I've seen mushrooms in the wild like this, but they in their final stage, right as they're dying, the edges of the mushroom curl up into like a wine cup or a grail. And then what happens is, if they fill with rain or water, dew in the morning, that absorbs the red color out of the skin of the mushroom into the water. So you would be effectively, turning water into wine and, drinking the wine, right?
And as you eat the body of Christ, there's so many connections when you actually put all this together. It really is fascinating. And,
but, John Allegro was the Dead Sea Scroll scholar who first discovered a lot of this stuff, and he had his career destroyed by Gordon Wasson and the CIA. So, we've gone through his work line by line, and it's very tight, and it's a tremendous amount of effort to keep people from studying it.
Absolutely. Well, Jan, thanks so much for joining me today, and I hope this has been enlightening for people as we go through the motions of all these different ceremonies, rituals, customs, holidays. Really been fun.
Indeed. Thank you for having me on, Clint.
Hi, my friend. And if you stay tuned on Monday, we're at the Anniston Lark, Texas. And Merry Christmas.